And as more people join us, that'll be fine. They will pick us up wherever we are. So welcome everybody to a workshop, advanced workshop, research success workshop. I'm Mary Jo Daniel, and I am the interim associate vice president for research and the director of the Faculty Research Development Office. And I am a co-PI for Advance. So we're really glad that you could make it today. And you know, the collaboration between the Vice President for Research Office and Advance has been a really positive one, and I'm glad that we can continue to do that. Presenting with me today is Stephanie Tofighi, and she is a member of the FRDO network. And today we're going to be talking about resources and available to you for your research and scholarship through the AVPR and FRDO. And we did invite people to submit questions in advance. And if at any point you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. We have Sandy in the Advance office. Say hello, Sandy. She'll be keeping an eye on chat, as well as Stephanie and I. So feel free to put questions in the chat. And then we'll also have periods where we'll pause and invite you to ask questions live and in person. This is, we're attempting to make it somewhat interactive. It's a little bit challenging in the Zoom space, but we're all learning about how to do that better. So we appreciate your participation. If you do ask a question by voice, we ask that you at that time turn on your camera as well as unmuting yourself. It's easier to hear you when you've unmuted. And it just helps us to see who we're talking to if you can turn on your camera at that point. So with that, we're going to get started. And we're going to start with a question. So Sandy, I'm going to ask you to put up the first poll question. And once that question is up, I'm going to ask everybody to mark an answer. And this is anonymous, so we won't know who chooses what. But here's your first question. Writing proposals for external funding. A is a great way to spend evenings and weekends. B seems like a daunting task. C leads to tenure and promotion. And the fourth one is builds character. So please pick one, and we'll give you a minute to do that. I'll give you just a few more seconds, and then the poll's going to close. As I said, it's anonymous, so don't be afraid. A couple of you, oh, I bet I'm one of the ones who hasn't voted yet. Okay, Sandy, when the poll closed, please show us the results. There we go. So leads to tenure and promotion is the winner. Somebody out there likes to spend their evenings and weekends writing proposals. I'd like to ask if any of you felt like none of those applied to you. And if you thought none of them really applied, just raise your hand, the little blue hand, using the participants tab. All right, Renya. So Renya, I'm going to ask you to, yes, Owen, I asked you to pick only one, and there was a reason for that. So we'll get to you, Owen. But Renya, why do you think none of those applied to you?
Well, I would say right now I have tenure and I'm a professor, so I don't, as much as I do think it's important for tenure and promotion, I'm also in a field that is really varied on how people pursue it. So I did apply for grants, but it was also something that wasn't weighted as heavily as I know in some disciplines. And, you know, I would just say with all of this is like, I feel more than anything, like I wanted grants at times to get my work done. But I mean, it's daunting, but not overwhelming. I do think it builds character, which is what I said. And I do spend weekends and evenings on it, although I can't say that it's always what I wish I was doing. And so I just sort of feel like it's something that's really important. It's part of what we do. I would love it if we just funded research without having us all spend so much time writing grants and proposals.
Okay, thank you, Renya. And that was part of the reason we asked you to pick one, is because it isn't simple, it isn't complex, and it's not the same for everyone. Dominika, you wanted to make a comment?
Good morning. Hi. Yes, I just wanted to say that for me, the way I think of it is a means of doing your research, of moving your research forward. So that's the primary reason why I would write grants.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and did you have a difficulty picking just one?
I would argue that the middle two both seemed very appropriate given my situation.
And what's your situation?
First year faculty member.
Okay. And that's really important. People are in different parts of their career, and these answers change, and there are other answers that aren't here at all. And for some disciplines, getting external funding is absolutely critical for tenure and promotion, and for some, it's not. And that's one of the things that everybody needs to know about their own discipline and their own department. But it's also the case that more and more, as resources are slim, that there are more and more pressures to find additional funding to get the work done, to move the research and the scholarship ahead. So what we're going to do today is look at what we have available at UNM that you can access for getting external funding and for moving your research forward, even if you're not going after external funding. We also have internal funding sources, and then just resources that can help overall. Okay, next we have question number 2. And then that's, I promise, we're not going to spend the whole time question and answer here. But Sandy, if you'll put up question number 2, which, there you go. The members of the FRDO, sometimes called FRDO network, A, are hobbits. B, help faculty develop winning proposals. C, submit proposals to sponsors. And D, play in a punk rock band. I'm glad to see people have a sense of humor. We're almost all there. I think we can close it, Sandy. All right, so there are some questions about identity here. We are, in fact, not officially hobbits, although I will say there is a fandom of hobbitry involved in the FRDO network. We do help faculty develop winning proposals, and that's what we're going to spend some time on today, looking at. We do not submit proposals to sponsors, and that's one of the key things we need to be clear. Everybody understands what we can and cannot do. And some do play in a punk rock band. That's true. Or wish they did. Okay, thank you. So we're going to launch into what we did. Thanks, Sandy, if you want to close that. And I am going to share my screen. We're going to do this without PowerPoint. We hope. And we're going to spend our time looking at some of the resources that are available on the FRDO website. So hopefully you can see that. And this will give us a chance to look at what you can access on your own and how you can move it forward. So the FRDO website is frdo.unm.edu. And the lovely picture you're seeing right now, or we're seeing, are the folks who are in the central office. But we are a network, and the network consists of 4 of us who work in the central office, including Stephanie, who is presenting with me today. And I think Carmen's on the call as well today. And then we have support folks embedded in many of the colleges that do a lot of research. So arts and sciences, School of Engineering, education, architecture and planning, and fine arts. If you're not in one of those colleges, when it comes time, if you're asking for help, then any of us particularly in the central office, will help you, but we also all meet together and we support each other. So the idea is that whatever assistance faculty need, there's somebody who can help them out. Many of you will have support within your department, and we encourage you to start there, to see what support you have in your department. And then you can reach out to FRDO. You can start with FRDO, and if there is department support, we'll point you in that direction. So what do these people do? If you go to our website and you go to the home page, we have these core services. And so these are the kinds of ways that we can support faculty in securing external funding. In addition to these tasks, we also support campus leadership, whether it's at the college level, the deans, or the university level, the vice president for research, in implementing various research initiatives. We're going to focus today on the support that we provide to faculty. And again, I'll just reiterate, we will pause for questions, but if any questions come up as I'm talking or as Stephanie's talking, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat and we will take time to look at them. So where do people start? Usually they start by looking for funding. And so in this section, find funding opportunities. There's a link up at the top, or there's the link I just clicked on. We do have a section on COVID-19 funding. This changes and it's hard to keep up, but we do our best. And hopefully in the near future, this section will go away, but we'll see. We have a section that refers to internal competitions, internal sources of funding. And so the first there is the Research Allocations Committee, the RAC funding, which hopefully many of you know about and some of you applied for. So if you're new to funding, that's a great place to start. And especially if in your discipline, there aren't huge sources of funding, RAC funding can be a way to get started and a way to access smaller amounts of money that can help you get to an archive or some collection that will help you in your research, or collect some initial data for research. UNM has access to an extremely powerful database, the Pivot database, and everybody who has a UNM email account can access Pivot. And we'll do that in a second. We have identified some sort of pre-curated Pivot resources. And so if you're in natural sciences, you can click here, and this is a starting point for search for funding opportunities that relate to natural sciences. It's pretty broad, so it's not going to get you exactly what you need personally. In order to access Pivot, you do have to sign in, and let's see if it'll work for me today. Because we're off campus. Okay, if you haven't ever signed in on that previous one, it says you can set up an account, and you can then set up your own search. So for this, if I put in something very general like water resources, I get a nice big list, and some of it is probably not at all relevant. So you can use an advanced search to refine your search, and there's lots and lots of fields. We're not going to go through all of this. If you want any help setting up your own Pivot search, we can help you with that. But if you've done any kind of database work, you can put in the keywords that work for your specific interest, and this database will give you results from federal resources, from local resources, private, public, and you can save your search so that every Sunday night you get an email that says these are the new items that came up from your search. I'm going to go back to FRDO. And that's all Gabrielle's fault that we call ourselves FRDO, by the way, who's also on this call. When you look at, I gotta give a second to catch her. These curated searches, if we look at humanities, for instance, You can go to the last 7 days, and these are the new ones. And you can start here and look, do any of these seem relevant to me? What are the keywords they're using? And these curated lists, in addition to being on our website, we send them out to each of the colleges, to our contacts, and they may be on your college website, or they may be posted to individuals, depending on how your college handles it. As I said, these are pretty general, so it's probably not going to meet your specific needs, but it's a way to get started. And when you look at these, you click on them and you'll get more information, and it'll give you the link to the actual solicitation, but you can spend a little time cruising through to see if this seems like it's something that's relevant to you. Now, if you find something and it says it's due in a week, I strongly encourage you to bookmark it and put a note on your calendar to go back and look at it in 6 months, because writing a proposal for external funding in a week is not likely to be successful and may not even be possible to get through all of the systems. So Pivot is a great tool that you can use to find all kinds of funding. We also have on the website Foundation Directory Online. Those of you in humanities where your funding comes from foundations as much, if not more, than from federal sponsors, that directory may be more useful for you, although many of the foundations are in Pivot as well. And then the federal agencies have their own funding databases, and you can sign up for getting email notifications that, again, are targeted to your specific areas. So there's lots of ways to find out about funding. I also strongly encourage you, talk to your colleagues. Where have they been getting funding? How did they, what is the program that they use to get funding? Look at papers that have been published in the acknowledgments section. What program do they acknowledge for funding to get them where they are? So these are all ways to find funding, and that's just the first step of many. And I'm going to pause there for a second, see if anybody has any questions. You can just raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask. That's the thing with Zoom, it's hard to tell, but I don't see any questions right now. Okay. Once you've found some funding, the FRDU website also has a slew of resources for you that you can use. Some of these, for instance, are workshops that have been held in the past. There's also connections to the Office of Sponsored Projects, which I should back up and just say, I told you that FRDO does not actually submit proposals. We help you get it ready so that the Office of Sponsored Projects, OSP, can actually do the submission. They are the only entity that is has the authority to actually submit to sponsors and to sign agreements for funding. So everything for external funding needs to go through the Office of Sponsored Projects. So then what does FRDO do? We can help with a whole range of things. So if you are looking at a large proposal, or not even large, but it's interdisciplinary, and you want some help bringing people together to sort through ideas before you even get to the writing part, we can help facilitate those kinds of groups. We can help with CAIUs, which is the system that UNM uses for monitoring and routing proposals. So it used to be that you had to get signatures on pieces of paper. Now it's all done electronically. We can help with editing and formatting of proposals. We do not provide technical feedback in terms of, what's the quality of the science or the scholarship, but we can help you with, does it make sense? Is it readable? Is there logic? Does it flow? And does it match the solicitation requirements? Every funder has a different way of approaching what they expected a proposal. And it's not always easy to figure out exactly what they're looking for. But we can help with going through a solicitation and saying what is allowed, what isn't allowed, are we eligible, and what parameters are there that we have to be sure are met in the proposal. We can help with budget preparation. That's one of the things that is probably, for many people, sort of the least fun. Hopefully you find writing proposals, generating ideas, thinking up ways that you're going to create new knowledge, that's engaging, and maybe that you want to spend your weekends on. But the budget and the paperwork and all of those other bits probably are not what you want to spend a lot of time on. And so that's where you can reach out. And then communicating with stakeholders. If you've got partners and you just, whether it's another university or you want to work with the community and you want some help making connections, we can help with those kinds of communications as well. So there's a whole lot of different ways of looking at this. The bottom line, though, is you should never think that you have to do any kind of proposal all by yourself. In fact, I strongly encourage you not to do it all by yourself, because you can get feedback and make it a more competitive and compelling case by having another set of eyes. And so that's both on the content, but then also on the process to make sure that you've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. And there are a lot of them in this process. So with that, I'm going to pause again, and I'm going to stop sharing so I can see all of you. Do we have any questions or comments on that quick overview of the resources and services available? Catherine Masseth. I think you're muted still.
Sorry. Quick, I guess, first of all, it's Massoth, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Are these resources also available for the RAC applications, or is it just for external?
No, you can ask. Okay. You're gonna do because we're coming through. There you go. Oh yeah. No, you can ask for assistance on the RAC, as well as on if you're writing a pre-proposal for what's called a limited competition. We are very careful that if we provide any sort of input on a pre-proposal or an internal funding proposal, that the people who provide that input are in no way associated with the review of the proposals. And so we do keep them completely separate. But yes, you can ask for help with the RAC. The RAC grants are not external, so they don't have to go through CAUs, but they do have requirements, and they are great practice for writing proposals for external funders. Any other questions? Okay, then I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie, who's going to look a little more closely at some resources specifically for early investigators and working with communities.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for coming today. I am Stephanie Tofighi. Like Mary Jo said, I'm from the central office, so I have the opportunity to be able to work with everyone across campus. When you're working on individual proposals, like Mary Jo said, it's best to go with the people who are within your individual departments, but we do help with interdisciplinary. And then because of the resources that we're able to provide, I've also been able to help create some extra resources specifically for early career investigators. One of those pieces is a pretty comprehensive website that allows early career investigators to see some funding opportunities and some resources that are specific to them. So right now I should be sharing my screen. And so when you go to the homepage where Mary Jo was just at, if you go to the tab line, you can see early career support. For any of you who have been at another university, I've been around to a few, and I can say that, the UNM Faculty Research Development Office is probably one of the few that has been able to invest so much in early career investigators to be able to showcase, them individually. And so we have resources available to celebrate the early career awards that faculty have gotten. I encourage faculty to check this out when they are looking at applying for awards, just so that they can get an idea of who on campus has already received those awards, and maybe to be able to reach out to them to be able to get input, advice, experience from them about how it was to work with their sponsors and that particular program. And then we also have this archive of early career investigator funding opportunities. So these are ones that specifically limit the participation of these programs to early career investigators. Early career investigators may mean a broad range of criteria depending on who the specific sponsor is or the specific program. So it's really important to keep that in mind when you're thinking of yourself as being an early career investigator. You may think to yourself, well, I'm already tenured, I'm an associate professor. But actually for the National Institutes of Health, it's typically, you're an early career investigator until you've been post-terminal degree for 10 years. So even when you're an associate professor, you still may qualify for some early career investigator programs within different sponsor organizations. So I encourage you to check it out, to look into what is available. This is updated as often as I can possibly update it. I get information from a lot of different sources. If you ever see something that is specific to early career investigators and you'd like to share it with the rest of campus, I would love to be able to include it on the website. So that is available. When you go to the site, like say for instance, if you are interested in clinical psychology, if you have that as your background, you can find out more about the program by going here. You can see exactly what it means to be eligible for this program, what the budget amount is, how long it lasts, when the deadline is, funding priorities that the sponsor has identified within their solicitation, and then any other information that may be relevant to you submitting to this program. When you are wanting to look a little bit deeper, you can go to the URL and to be able to be sent directly to that website. So those are all available. You can have an opportunity to be able to search. So if you are interested in looking specifically for a specific sponsor, like say for instance, if you're looking at NASA, for instance, you can be able to put that into the search bar and you can see the different programs that are available for NASA. There may be more, but if they're not upcoming, they're not on the list at this time. I remove them when they have expired or when they're not going to be coming up. You can do the same for keyword searches. So say for instance, if you're a historian, you can look up history. And then you can be able to be brought to things that are specific to your particular discipline. It does not necessarily mean that it will always be there. Like I said, it's, I get it from a lot of different sources, but just because it's not there right now does not necessarily mean that it will never be there. And Mary Jo has already said about looking in the pivot searches or searching through foundations to also be able to find specific information. Other resources that are available are workshops and other resources that have been curated for early career investigators. The NSF Career Program is something that I have had a personal interest in for many, many years since my graduate studies days. And so I keep a pretty comprehensive list of resources that are available for the career. And then I also organize and facilitate a career cohort every year. Our next meeting is going to be on broader impacts next Tuesday. So if you are signed up for that, I look forward to seeing you then. If you're not, or you know somebody who may benefit from attending, feel free to send them my contact information and I would be happy to invite them. There are different resources that are down here. So something that I'm asked for many, many times by professors who are beginning the process is, can we see sample proposals? This is not necessarily just of the career. It also is about other programs that they may be interested in applying for. Sometimes PIs, they do make their proposals available. I found that this is most common in SCICE, so that's computer science from the NSF. And so those are available just on the internet if you Google search for them. So I've been able to find them there. The NSF also has their Big 10 ideas. So if you're interested in looking at proposals for the NSF that are outside of the career, it's always really good to find a connection to the 10 big ideas, just so that you can be able to match what they are most interested in looking at. There's also more information on the NIH, and then over here about what are some reviewer comments that may be there, and also some criticisms that have been around. Speaking of that, we also have strategies for success. Recently, the VPR's office purchased this book. It's called New Faculty Guide to Competing for Research Funding. If you're on the early PI listserv, I've already sent out the link to that listserv, but if you are not and you are still interested in finding out what has been put together about new faculty, or maybe faculty who have not had as much experience in the research domain of searching for external funding, I really recommend this book. It's got a lot of really great topical information about what reviewers have looked for, about finding peer mentors, about looking into what the writing process what the writing and review process really includes. And so when you are interested in looking at that, you will need to use your UNM ID and password to be able to download the PDF. But once you are there, this is what it looks like. And so you can see a table of contents. It includes, what the big picture is, finding funding, planning and developing your proposal, writing the proposal, and then going forward. What do you want to do with your resubmissions and your reviews? And so this really helps, you to lay out a plan for going forward. So that's primarily what we have for our early career support. But like Mary Jo said, everything is also available when you are talking to the research development specialists or the faculty research support officers, to be able to find the individual resources for you. With that in mind, going to broader impacts. Broader impacts is the term that the National Science Foundation uses to identify work that your research can contribute to that can benefit society. And so it's not necessarily your research, but it is related to your research, or it could be your research, depending on what your discipline is and what your research objectives are. There are a number of ways of identifying broader impacts, whether that be through the research itself as a result of the research, or as a side project kind of the research. And so the broader impacts typically are seen as being, again, like how your research is benefiting society, either indirectly or directly. When you are working on developing your broader impacts, there are a number of tools that we've made available on this tab of our website to be able to help you out with that. Establishing your broader impacts identity, that is something that a program that I participated in called Broader Impact Design, which was a project that was funded by the NSF. They developed this concept of a broader impacts identity. And the goal of that is simply to help researchers identify how their research naturally impacts society, and then to help them identify resources and partners that could better help them to be able to reach that societally impactful goal. And so it's you making the idea of, okay, well, this is where my research naturally could help out. This is what I personally want to contribute to society. These are the resources that I need and the people that I need to have on my team to be able to do that. And so that's identifying your broader impacts identity. Developing your broader impacts plan. This is a resource that, again, has been put together to help you lay out the plan to be able to develop those broader impacts. One thing that I've learned from working with faculty is that the research is something that maybe you've lived, you've eaten, you've breathed it, you've slept it, you've dreamed about it for possibly decades, depending on where you are in your career right now. The broader impact may be something that is external to that research domain. And so it's not something that is as natural. And so these are tips and resources that can help you to be able to develop that broader impact plan to make it as seamless and as simple as your research. Something that I encourage faculty to do is to find the right partners up front. Like Mary Jo said, you don't need to do this by yourself. This is definitely not something that any sponsor demands you to do of your own. That includes the NSF Career, which is a single PI program. And so when you are working on an externally funded project, or even an internal one like the RAC, you do not have to necessarily always do it by yourself. Finding the experts and finding the people who already are working on these projects is a really great way of doing business. And so that's why we're working on developing who those broader impacts partners may be. Down here, I've put together a list of different organizations that are in New Mexico, that are outside of New Mexico, that are closely related to the university or external to the university, depending on what the mission is. But it gives you an idea of who is available to possibly partner with, depending on what your ambitions are regarding those broader impacts. Also recently, I've started communicating with Andrea Poli from the College of Fine Arts and Carolyn Scruggs from the School of Architecture and Planning, and Irene Gray, who is from the PAIS Cooperative. And we've been talking about how we can better facilitate partnerships between researchers, whether they are scientists or non-scientists, at the University of New Mexico to be able to develop better broader impacts plans. And so that is a topic that is still in the works right now, but it's something that will definitely be moving forward. We've identified that there are many people within the School of Architecture and Planning and the College of Fine Arts, as well as in the humanities, who are already, they've already established these amazing partnerships with the community, and they're already engaged in providing not resources necessarily, but artistic or design or social science related, they're providing resources to the community, or they're working with the community to develop these programs. And so these partnerships are really, really powerful opportunities for other researchers within the university to be able to partner with, to be able to develop even better, broader impacts going forward. And so that's something that, like I said, it's in the works right now. Look forward to hearing more about it later. One more resource that I really want to draw your attention to is the NABI Broader Impacts Guiding Principles and Questions for NSF proposals. This is a resource that was put together by the NABI group, which was the National Alliance for Broader Impacts. It is now transitioned into ACES, which is Advancing Societal Impact of Science, which is an NSF funded center that evolved from the NABI project. But NABI, one of their biggest products that they were able to put together from their initial grant from the NSF was this guiding principles. And so this is a really great resource to keep in mind when you're developing your broader impacts. So you can ask you can answer the questions that they pose to you, And these are the questions that they're encouraging NSF reviewers to keep in mind also when they're evaluating NSF proposals, because something that NABI has identified is that, you know, when the NSF is asking reviewers to review, they're not necessarily bringing in broader impacts experts to participate on the review panels. And so this is something that the NSF has identified as needing to better evaluate broader impacts along with the research going on. I totally forgot to ask my questions, Mary Jo. Should have done that, man, oh man. Okay, Sandy, can you ask, like skip the broader impacts one because I totally just talked about that one too much.
Well, you could use it as a test. Were they listening?
There you go, I'll do that. Yes. Good call. Okay, so Sandy, could you ask the broader impacts question? All right, so for all of you who are paying attention, broader impacts and outreach activities are a necessary part of many grant proposals, provide a way to improve society, take a lot of time to effectively foster, are frustrating to me as an academic professor. So this is more for me to better understand where you are at. Again, this is all anonymous, so I won't know specifically who is asking the questions, but at least it will help us going forward to better develop programs and to change the website if we need to, depending on what we're looking at. So I like to see how the numbers are going up, but we're still only at 54%. So can do it. I love how you all are very confident in, you know, being able to effectively foster broader impacts. That's nice to see. And I also like to hear that it's not frustrating. That's actually something that, you know, we've identified that for, you know, for some larger projects, at least, sometimes the broader impacts are pushed onto, you know, one or two faculty who are typically not tenured, and so they don't necessarily have the means to be able to protest as well as maybe a tenured faculty does. And they do, I have heard frustration from that. So I'm glad to hear that nobody here is feeling that frustration. Okay, so thank you so much for participating in that. My last question is more of a wrap up for me. So I would really like to know, Sandy, can you ask the last question of mine? Thank you. I would really like to know what you need from the Research Development Office, like what you need from the Research Development Network. So at this stage in your academic career, whether that be as an assistant professor, as an associate professor, as a full professor, if you're there, what do you need the most help on? And so these are things that, you know, we may be able to help with, or we may not be able to help with, depending on the level that you're requesting. Things like managing my laboratory, I commonly think of as part of a grant proposal. I've seen a lot of people who, you know, when they're writing their proposals, maybe they forget some pieces, and so it just kind of helps you to keep that in mind. And showcasing your creative works, I included that one just because of you know, what we're thinking about right now of being able to bridge barriers and to develop better partnerships between scientists and non-scientists on campus. So if you are a non-scientist who does do creative works, partnering with somebody who is looking for a means of visually or you know, auditorially representing their research, it may be something that could be helpful to you. But it looks like most people are interested in writing a successful grant proposal. So we are very interested in helping you out with that. Our office does have experience working with many sponsors and with a lot of different programs. If we aren't, you know, don't have that experience with it already, we will definitely find out how to do it. The wonderful thing about having our network is that we have 10, professionals who have been in this business. We calculated at one time, I think we have over 200 years experience in this business. And so between the 10 of us, we're usually able to figure things out a little bit. So does anybody have any questions? I saw some chats and I wasn't sure where that was at.
We've been chatting in chat.
Okay.
But if anybody does have any questions, we'll pause here. And again, you can raise your hand if you want to talk. And then Stephanie, could you go to the homepage and show where the PI Listserv sign up is?
Yes, I can do that. So PI Listserv, best way to be alerted about anything that is related to the OVPR's office. We include limited competitions on there. So if you are interested in participating in limited competitions, that's how we send them out. Changes that are made to policies, to protocols, we will always let you know through the PI Listserv. Speaking of policies that have recently changed, something else that I wanted to draw your attention to, the NSF has changed the way that they are accepting biosketches and current and pending documents. And so if you are in the process of that, this subsite has got a lot of information about how to put together your new NSF biosketch and current and pending using either the fillable PDFs, which I do not recommend because they are clunky and you can't modify them. And the current and pending document is 15 pages long and you cannot edit that when you're submitting it. So it takes a lot of extra room. What we're recommending is to use the Science CV system, which is an online system that is originally through the NIH NCBI program. And so you can do it online and you can be able to delegate administrators or other scientists to your accounts so that they can help you with setting up your documents, or they can check them for accuracy if you need some help with that. One other thing that I wanted to call your attention to, again, when you go to proposal support, you can also be able to see where we are in terms of being an HSI, which is a Hispanic serving institution, an MI, which is a minority institution, and an MSI, which is a minority serving institution. This is a document that gets updated annually based on our enrollment. And so this is a document also that is available on the OSP website. If you go to their website and you go to PI resources, institutional facts is here. And down here, they have their UNM as an HSI, MI, and MSI. So those are available. But just so that you don't forget why we came back here, PI Listserv, very important. Sign up for it. You can do that easily by going here. If at any time the emails get too much for you, you just can't handle it, it's not in your interest at the time, you can unsubscribe from it. So it won't hurt you either way.
Thanks, Stephanie. And so again, we're going to pause here. We have just a few minutes because we are going to end a little bit before the hour. Those of us who go from one Zoom to another appreciate 5-minute breaks. But we do have time for a couple of questions if anybody has them. So we'll stop talking briefly, but you can put them in chat. You can also, if something occurs to you later, feel free to email us, and it's frdo@unm.edu. And we will all see it and somebody will answer you pretty quickly. There's also all over this website and on other websites, a red button that says click here for proposal support to request proposal support. And that will automatically send your request to whoever submit a request for proposal support. There it is. And you just put in your name and the request will go to whomever is assigned to your college, your unit. And we'll get back to you as soon as possible to try to answer your questions, find you the resources that you need. And I'm talking. I said I'd stop, so I will stop for a second here to see if you have any questions. And so, we can't allow, nature abhors a vacuum and people abhor silence in meetings. So I'll fill it with just two other points. One is the RAC came up as a source of internal funding for an internal funding source. A couple other ones that are out there that you should be aware of. The Grand Challenges have each put out calls for pilot seed projects, and those come up periodically. And so you should look into those. And the Grand Challenges, if you just Google UNM Grand Challenges, you'll get to their website and see if any are active. And then, of course, Advance has the Women in STEM Awards, and those come out in the spring, the request for proposals. And that is a great mechanism to kick off a research program or to change directions or find new collaborators. And it is restricted to women in STEM fields, but we define STEM as broadly as we can. So those are some other resources. And again, we can help you with any of those in terms of figuring out what's needed and helping to craft a competitive proposal. Any other questions? Okay, then Julia, thanks to Advance for hosting the session, and let us know if we can help you out.
And thanks everybody for attending. And thank you, Mary Jo and Stephanie.
And go get those proposals. Go get that funding.